What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nathan, and on this planet we send it. And what we're going to be getting today, well, hopefully by the end of the day, I'm going to be a brand new beekeeper. Those bees that have been up here up in the ceiling, in the eave of my roof over here, who's been gardening, well, moving pollen around here in my garden and doing great things, I finally decided I'm going to go ahead and try to capture them today and put them into a flow hive. And we'll talk about why I went with the flow hive later, but the first thing I want to do for this video, or the plan for this video, is we're going to go ahead, I'm going to talk to you about how we're going to wrangle these bees, in the words of Mr. Ed. And then what we're going to also do is, then as soon as we get done talking about the plan, I'm going to get right into it. All right, I got a plan in place. Risks are acceptable. Let's go ahead and send it. Alright, so what we're going to be doing here, since I am a first time ever about to be bee owner, never done any of this before at all, nothing, zero. This is going to be the first time I'm doing it. I've watched quite a few videos, and I know that doesn't necessarily, that obviously doesn't make me proficient, or anything like that. I'm still going in this as new as someone can possibly be. But, you know, in the words of Mr. Ed, who I've watched, you know, we're going to go ahead and wrangle some bees today. And then, you know, also got to give credit to, like, Frederick Dunn is another person who I've watched quite a bit. Obviously, I've watched quite a few Flow Hive videos. And then another lady, I don't know her name, but I think she does, like, honey steading, I believe is what her channel is. And she's done a lot of cool stuff, too. So I'm going to come in here, try to capture these bees, put them into the Flow Hive. They're acting a little, last night they already gave me a bee sting when I was kind of setting some things up, so I didn't get a whole entire swarm on me. I just got one at a time, so that's kind of a good sign. But today I'll definitely be going in full armor today, as you'll see here in just a second. But once I get up there, I'm going to try to go ahead and take each sort of honeycomb leaf one by one. And since it's kind of going to be up at about like 9 feet off of where the ladder is planted, I have to crawl up there, cut it down, and then come down the ladder. And then when I get over there, the first few of them, I'm not going to be too worried about. I'm going to brush the bees off into the hive, and then I'm going to probably put the smaller pieces of comb to the side. But when I get to, I believe, the second one or the third one, when it's pretty substantial, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the honeycomb the size of the frame, and then go ahead and put the rubber bands around it to hold it in place, and then that way the bees that are in there have some honeycomb to go ahead and start hopping on. But I'm going to be looking for the queen every single time I start getting to the brood, because I'm going to use my little bee capture, my queen bee holder, to go ahead to keep her in the hive so that they don't decide to fly out later today when I head out, or when I'm away from the hive. I want them to stay in there, so I'm going to keep the queen trapped in there overnight to let the bees all reacclimate to their new environment and the new location once the other bees that are out foraging come back. And then we'll go ahead and just, hopefully that's what keeps them overnight. And then that way I'll come out the next day, let the queen go, and hopefully they stay steady. At least that's the plan. All right, let's go ahead and send it. So before we get into the how things didn't go necessarily as planned, I did want to show you some of the before and after of some of the oil wood treatment that I did with this Flow Hive. My family had actually had the Flow Hive for a year. They decided that they weren't going to necessarily get into bees that soon. I was like, I have a beehive, so I'll go ahead and take it. So this is me doing some of the preconditioning of the hive prior to going and trying to capture the bees a couple of days later. All right, so this is the night before. I'm getting everything that I can get done prior to. You can see these bees are super docile. Hopefully they remain this way for tomorrow when I come and move them to a new home. Big goal is going to be to find the queen and then get her inside in my queen trap, and then keep her in there for overnight until I get back from the desert, which will be just a short overnight stay. So this is me walking out to the beehive feeling like I was an astronaut, because as you can see, I was on top of a patio covering, not necessarily on top of a deck. So I had to be very careful where I step in, not to step through. But here I am doing my initial smoke of the bees, just kind of getting them ready for what's to come. And then also I'm here setting up all of my frames in preparations to move the honeycomb, cut them, and put them into the hive. So this first comb was me sort of getting a use of, number one, how well my knife is going to go ahead and cut through, and also getting a feel for the comb, because again, this being my first time, this was all a new experience for me, and I was literally learning as I go here.
So once I cut that down and I went ahead and just brushed the bees off into the hive, I knew that this wasn't going to have much to it. So as far as resources, so I just put it in and put that to the side for now. And here I am going up for the second time. Then what I started to do when I realized I was getting to this point is there was a little bit more weight to this. So that was kind of like my indication that this had some stuff. It wasn't that full, but I was starting to see maybe some capped honey, and I was starting to see some nectar that was getting ready to be turned into some honey. And then one tip I learned was go ahead and pre-station the rubber bands on the frames. Also, I was using wood shavings, and I don't think that really is good because they didn't really last that long. And as far as the process, it was just kind of rinse, repeat, but this was the first comb that I brought down that actually had a good amount of stuff on it. As you can see here, I'm kind of highlighting it here. This was pretty full of bees. There was a lot of action going on there. And then this is what the empty frame looked like with a lot of brood, and there was a bee coming out, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I thought this frame was pretty cool because they were making drones or male bees, and also they had this queen cup here. But that was a little concerning because I wasn't sure if there was a queen or not since I had seen that. But I just continued putting it onto the frame and being very careful of all the cells where there was brood. So from this point on, I was especially careful to try to pay attention and find the queen. And I'm just going to let you know I didn't end up finding her. But just continued the process, started cutting down comb, brushing off the bees while looking for the queen, brushing off the bees, and then going ahead and trying to cut each honeycomb so it fit the frame with the least or the minimal disruption to the comb that was already created, so that I could kind of maximize what the bees had already done to give them less to create. And then it just kind of kept going up here, and I think this one was going to be the biggest piece of comb that I brought down that day. This was a pretty big one, and I was also having to get just a little, by this point I was trying to figure out what's the best way to sort of cut it down while also feeling the weight, because I didn't want the comb to snap on me as I brought it down, because they were starting to get heavy. And then as you can see, I was also having to be very careful kind of going down with my elbows because I was having to hold these larger pieces with both hands. Then it was just looking for the queen again. I was actually starting to get a little nervous because I hadn't seen the queen so far, and I knew that finding the queen was going to be the success of doing proper transfer or not. And then this seemed to have, I think this was a lot of drone bees, or maybe, drone comb or not, I'm not sure, but it was pretty cool. It was very large. And now that the comb was being significantly more full of brood throughout each piece, I had to be a lot more strategic. So you see me kind of placing the frame on where exactly I wanted to make the cut to maximize, or like I said, reduce the amount of disruption I was doing for the bees here, and also to a certain degree trying to maximize the amount of brood on each of these frames. And then once I got everything aligned on how I wanted it, I went ahead and just trimmed off the parts to go ahead and fit the piece of comb within each frame. And I just kind of stepped through it sort of methodically as I went through, being careful not to, basically being able to maximize the brood within there so that the bees would have very little that they needed to do once I got the frames inside the hive, because I recognized the bees would have to take what I gave them and sort of fix everything to their liking. So I was trying to be mindful of that and basically reduce the amount of work they were going to have to do, because the least work that they were going to have to do in order to get ready for the honey super, which you can kind of see there, I was pointing to the honey, that the sooner I would be able to get honey. And then, yeah, you can see me just kind of pointing out some of these things I just thought was so cool. It looked like there was larvae or maybe a bee coming out there, and just a lot of different features that I hadn't necessarily seen before in person. And to be honest, I just started falling in love with the bees. Even though you can see there's quite a few bees flying around me, and I was getting a little concerned that they were, definitely wasn't too much of a tranquil hive, or at least maybe they were pretty upset because I was literally destroying the home that they had just created. So I am using this video as a vlog because I do want to kind of, just in case I need to do some forensics later on, since I'm not too sure how things are going to be turning out, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the end of this video. But since things didn't necessarily go as planned, I'm still trying to keep a record of what took place during this, just so I can, if anything, improve the way I go forward, and and the other part of it is see either where I went wrong or potentially went right. this is the third to the last honeycomb that I'm going to be putting in here. And I started to pile up quite a few extra pieces, as you're about to see here on the next clip. And these extra pieces, I was planning to, for the very last frame, hopefully be able to use them in the last frame and be able to get just about everything that the bees provided into there. And then also, I was starting to get honey on my hand here, so I was like eagerly wanting to try it, but I definitely wasn't going to be taking off my mask with my face shield with all these bees around. And then again, I was just kind of examining the different brews, taking a look at the different things that the bees were showing me, trying to learn as much as I could on this and make the best out of this situation, since it was my first time doing this and I was trying to just maximize the learning experience. So now I had not found the queen. And this is where it kind of becomes a little sad for me, because I knew that trying to find the queen was critical to making sure that the bees by the end of the night would stay in the new hive box that I gave them. And so you can kind of see me here just randomly grabbing handfuls of honey and putting them in there before I sort of closed off the last couple of frames. And you can see me here, I'm just doing some extra rubber bands, getting on the various pieces of the honeycomb and sticking them in there. But like I said, at this point I was starting to feel a little bit bummed, because I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out. But in the end, I kind of ended up just doing multiple attempts on trying to get those bees, at least handfuls of bees, into there. And I was trying to think, what could I do? And then at least at this point I was feeling pretty good, because quite a few bees were in there. And I had gotten, a good amount of bees in there. And then you can see me here just hoping to disturb them all and use various methods to get them into the hive. When I mean disturb them all, I kind of wanted them to start flying so that hopefully they flew to the box, because I did start to see that, and you'll see here in a little bit in a couple of clips, that they did started releasing their pheromones at the beginning of the door entrance, or at the hive entrance, and I was hoping that that would have attracted them all into there. But unfortunately, I did not get to that point, so I was now trying to scoop them all into the box. And you can see me here taking off the lid again, and then I'm basically going to just try to hoping that in every load that I put in there, the queen is in there too. And like I said, I don't think I was successful in doing so, in finding the queen later, because here in just a little bit I'm going to show you some pictures of what it looked like that evening. So I definitely wanted to show you guys this, because I didn't see this on anywhere else. But since I was up on a patio, and that might be unique to my situation, I had like 50 bees or whatever around me, and I was like waiting for them to leave me alone, but they wouldn't. So eventually I just had to start killing them one by one. And the good thing is that they're kind of going right by my face, so it was easy for me to anticipate where they're going. But yeah, this was a thing. As I mentioned earlier, I had to bring my brother back to the desert, and I asked my wife while I was there to send me a picture of the bees. And at least looking at this picture, I thought I just had completely failed, because it appeared they had all completely went back up. So when I got back the next day, you can see me recording them, I was taking a look at them. I saw nectar on their legs, so I was thinking that, okay, some of them definitely are looking to make this their home, and I was feeling pretty good about it. But it was just like when you looked up and saw the bees way up here, it was just like, I just really was feeling like a failure since I didn't find the queen.
All right. So I'm just about 24 hours later, and I was unsuccessful in finding the queen. So I think I have accidentally caused a split, since there's quite a few bees there at the entrance, and it looks like they're doing some work inside the hive. At least I hope that's what they're doing. But there's definitely a group up by the queen that I think I'm going to try to capture with this makeshift bee vac that I found on YouTube. So supposedly the comments said that other people had tried it and it works really well, so we're going to give it a go. All right, let's go ahead and send it so we can reunite these bees together with their queen. All right, so I got most of the bees vacuumed up. It took me a second. I got it the vac going, and then it clogged up. It took me a minute to realize that I had clogged it up so fast. Well, so lesson learned, I just didn't try to take on more than my vacuum could chew from that point on. But I got quite a bit in here. What I'm going to do now is just let the bees be for a little bit. I'm going to see if all the bees that are up at the top potentially congregate around here. And then I'll feel pretty confident that I got the queen. I went up a couple of times to see her, but trying to see in the shade of the eave through this cap wasn't working very well, through this veil. So I'm just going to see what happens. Just going to wait a little bit, and we'll see what happens here in a couple of hours.
So after I got all the bees vacuumed up, I went ahead and removed the plug on the top of the Flow Hive cover and then flipped the bucket over for them to go ahead and crawl on in. I'm intentionally not showing the bee vacuuming because I don't recommend what I used. But by the end of the evening, this is what was left, and unfortunately, I ended up killing a lot of the bees via the bee vacuum. I really felt bad for how many bees perished. And the only saving grace is that quite a large amount of bees also survived and did decide to make the new Flow Hive their home. And so since they seemed like they were taken to the new home, I decided to go give them some sugar water, as you can see here. And I just was pretty happy because by the time I set it down and just enough time to pick up my GoPro and start recording, I started seeing this bee come around, started taking a little drink. Alright, so that's going to go ahead and wrap up this video. And what was not seen in the video is that it took me about 2 weeks to do all of that, and it's probably about 4 weeks later from the time I recorded it. So what the plan for the next video is I'm going to show you that I've been moving the hive all the way over to its final position, so that when I get it to its final position, the next video we're going to be doing is my first inspection after I have done all what you just saw and moved it around to its final position, and see if it might be ready for the honey super. And if it is, which I think that'll probably be a little fast, but if it is, that'll be pretty awesome. But anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.